Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Greg Schwem, who's more than a comedian. He's a motivational corporate comedian. And as a stand-up comedian, he's opened for people like Jay Leno, Celine Dion, Kenny Loggins, Pat Benatar, and many more. He's appeared on Sirus Sattelite Radio and Comedy Central. He's also got a new special on Drybar Comedy called Cant Quarantine Laughter, which on the corporate stages, Greg calls You Can't Cancel Laughter. He is a sure thing every time he's booked and has been speaking for over 2 decades to some of the biggest companies and organizations in the world. So please join me now with the very funny and entertaining Greg Schwem. Well, hello, Greg Schwem, and thank you for joining me here on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing great, Chris. Great to see you again.
I know, it's always great to be seen, and it's great to always see you because you are a man who always makes me laugh. You're always fun to deal with, even behind the scenes and of course out on stage. I'll never forget when I saw you in person in front of like thousands of people in Long Beach years ago, a decade ago more. You were absolutely incredible. And I love the fact that you not only were so funny, but that you customized so well for that particular audience, who I believe was in the waste business.
They were actually, they were in the self-storage industry.
Oh.
So it was the people that, rented space.
Containers.
Empty space. Yes, so you could put all of your stuff that you just couldn't bear to part with. And they were a great audience. And it was kind of interesting to, like, how am I going to customize empty space? That was like the first challenge. But they were tremendous, and they really didn't take themselves too seriously, and that's what I love. And that's very complimentary about them. And and they were willing to let me just have fun with them, and that's what I like to do on stage with all my corporate audiences.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. I was like, my side was hurting from laughing so hard, and the whole room was absolutely giving you a rave review just by the laughter and the clapping and the hilarity, and again, the customization, which I really didn't realize what it was at the time. I didn't get it. I was surprised at how great it was because, I feel like a comedian is completely different from what you do because you come out and you're very funny, but you're giving a keynote speech, and it's
correct.
It's definitely a lot of jokes and a lot of fun, but you're including that industry. You've done research on their website and on their history and the things they're grappling with, and their competition maybe, and you're allowed to poke fun. You have a phone call with them, so you know what's fair game and what's appropriate, and you just hit it out of the park every single time. So it's always been a pleasure booking you, and I know you've had such an amazing career. You've opened for people like Jay Leno, Celine Dion, and Pat Benatar, and Leann Rimes, and Kenny Loggins, and Keith Urban, and of course, you've been on Comedy Central and Sirius. So how do you stay relevant? You've been around for a quarter century, not to,
Yes.
I guess I should say 25 years.
You gotta remove the word century from my bio, please. But you're staying relevant, I think, just means staying up on trends in business, and because that's what the whole idea. You mentioned it earlier about what separates me from being a comedian. I think at a corporate event, to just bring your nightclub act in isn't really going to cut it. This is a different audience, and a lot of people don't realize that. They want to hear about themselves, and they do want to hear about what's going on, and they want to laugh at themselves, as long as it's done tastefully.
Right.
And I do it tastefully. But right now, obviously the big issues are, the big buzzwords that you keep hearing are employee retention, mental health, wellness, that kind of thing. What's going to keep people happy? And so I've had to shift some of my material, and that's the one, now I'm doing a lot of jokes about employee benefit plans and wellness programs. And, you go on websites and you see them all talking about, hey, we work hard, but we play harder. And, and you see everybody in the company with their dog in the, that's on the website. I think stuff like that is funny.
Right.
And that's what they want to hear about. And that brings back to the audience knows when they see me that I have dove into their culture.
You've done your research.
Yeah, and they like hearing that. I mean, corporate audiences, we both know, are not stupid, and I think they know really quick if you're phoning one in, and they will tune you out, as they should, very quickly.
Yeah, and you started out obviously as a stand-up comic, right?
Yeah, I did.
But you were smart enough because you went to Northwestern to figure out how to keep notes.
That might have something to do with it, yeah. Well, it's weird how I got into it. I mean, I was doing a lot of material about like computers and...
Oh, right, Comedy with a Bite.
Yeah, that's Comedy with a Bite is still the name of my company, BYTE, but I started that out because when I started doing stand-up, it was kind of in that age of Bill Gates and take over the world, and everybody all of a sudden had to learn how to run a computer. And I was doing material about trying to figure out how to work a computer in my nightclub act, in my comedy club act. And I had people come up to me afterwards and say, please come down to our office and do that bit. Wow. Just that one. Just do those 10 minutes. And because that's exactly what we're going through. Right. And that opened up a whole new realm of shows for me. And the more I did it, the more I thought I know how to connect with these people.
Right. And that's funny because I say that to aspiring speakers and speakers who I meet for the first time all the time, that if the world around you is telling you that you should be speaking at their church or at their school or most importantly at their business because you have something to say, and they're telling you that's when you know you've got something. That's when you know you're a speaker for real. And there's definitely a time and a place for comedy, but there's definitely a message that people are looking for more often than not, that definitely would be something where they want to see themselves, they want to learn something, they want to be inspired and feel good. And I know that's the other thing you really do really well, which I love, is you really make them feel good about what they do and who they are. And so sometimes there's like an internal, complaint about customers, or there's a thing in the media that maybe they're talking down about that particular industry or that, those types of workers, and you kind of stick up for them and say the things that everybody in the room is thinking, right?
Right, absolutely. I think that's where a lot of companies that hire humorists, I think that's where the humorist gets into trouble sometimes, because I think there's a very fine line. I like to have fun with a group, but I think there's a very fine line between having fun with them and mocking them or belittling them.
Right.
And once you do that you're never going to get them back. And I always believe in being very positive. And I think companies are willing, like I did a show for McDonald's years ago, and they had just had a huge bust, a huge marketing. They had a new sandwich that came out, and it was a flop, and they knew it. And they told me, they said, you can do a couple of jokes about this, don't push it. Like, don't do 10 minutes about it. Right. Like it's like we can have fun to a point. Right. And I think most companies are like that. They're willing to laugh at their mistakes, but don't dwell on. You want to dwell on their successes, and that's what I want to do.
So give us some examples of some of the things that recently you've enjoyed doing that seem to go well, where you kind of really picked out an industry and kind of the internal dialogue that these people were having in the audience that you kind of hit the nail on the head, because I know you do that every time, and it's just great. I'd love to hear a couple examples.
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is just the whole shifting back from virtual to in-person. That's what everybody's doing. I mean, that is probably the biggest issue in corporate America is, do we stay virtual? Do we go back to a hybrid situation in the office? And everybody's got a different school of thought. My whole thing is to try and, right now I am letting people know that there is, even though like COVID wasn't funny, because it's not, but there's a lot of humor that came out of COVID. There's a lot of just the weird way we have to work, whether it's virtual schooling. There's so many parents in the audience, and I do a bunch of jokes about, I'll bet you thought the homeschooling thing was going to be really easy because you thought it would last 2 weeks, and hey, let's learn about fractions, and I'm going to cut this apple into 8 pieces, and you're going to eat 2 of them, and that's 6/8 left, and that's 3/4, and how easy was that? And then I say, now fast forward 6 months later, what were those lessons like? It's like Mommy's Chardonnay bottle's 2/3 empty, and the liquor store closes in a quarter of an hour. And that's just a big hit, because it does show people we can laugh about this horrible thing that we went through now we're moving on.
Absolutely. And so when people give you feedback at the end of a speech, and it's the audience coming up to you and talking to you, or it's the client afterwards giving you a review, what are you hearing a lot of in general, and then maybe more so now, what are you hearing a lot of that really resonated with them, besides what you just said, but more like about kind of why you killed it and why you hit it out of the park? Because I've gotten so many great reviews about you over the years, but I want to hear the latest stuff you've been hearing a little bit, or that maybe surprised you that you heard.
Yeah. Well, I've always said the biggest compliment I can get is when they come up to me and they say, we needed that. Not necessarily you were hilarious or this, or, I mean, that's all great too. But if I can hear we needed that, because I think in corporate events, you're not expecting humor. It's an add-on in a way. You're expecting to hear from the CEO and the CFO and the CMO, and here's the sales, and here's a motivational speaker, and here's a futurist, and that kind of thing. So humor is just sort of an addition. Now I'm hearing that even more, because again, as people return to in-person meetings and face-to-face communication, I think that humor has sadly been taken away a little bit from the corporate environment. And that's why I actually, during COVID, developed a new presentation called You Can't Cancel Laughter. And the whole idea...
I love that.
Yeah, the whole idea was to challenge the audience a little bit and to say, look, because we do have to worry, cancel culture is a big thing, and, who's offended and that kind of thing. And I am basically challenging audiences in this presentation to say, if you're going to take away humor, you are also be careful about that, because you're eliminating creativity, you're eliminating spontaneity, you are eliminating teamwork, you're eliminating fun. And again, those are the big buzzwords that you hear in corporate America. Positive work environment, mental health, wellness, all of that kind of stuff. So
that's part of it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want this to be an in-your-face presentation. I've always said I can't have a serious discussion with you about humor unless I first make you laugh. So that's what I'm going to do first. Then we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to show you examples of companies that used humor during the pandemic, how it worked for them, and how you shouldn't just, when somebody comes up with an idea that's funny, instead of saying, swipe left on that because such and such might be offended. Talk it out a little bit, and you'll be surprised.
So you haven't had to hire any security as of the recent,
nobody's rushed the stage.
The recent goings-ons in comedy these days. That's good. No, but you make some really great points about that, and I know that. Tell us a little bit more about You Can't Quarantine Laughter. Is there it sounds like there's a little bit of interactive workshop-y stuff going on, or
a little bit. And I changed it from quarantine. I'm trying to get. I changed it from quarantine to You Can't Cancel.
Can't cancel
because we're out of
That's
quarantine
better.
now. So
it's better.
But there is workshop. I do tell the audience. I say it right up front. I say, if you're looking at me saying this guy's going to tell us what is and isn't funny, I just say you're in the wrong place, because there is no answer to that.
Sure.
But I do say that it's good. I say thank you for hiring me, because I've been in the trenches. I've been on both sides. I'm seeing it from your side, but I've also been that guy on stage and I use this as an example. I've been that guy that has had people come up to me afterwards in a comedy club and say, "Hey, Mr. Comedian, you sucked," and walk away. And and I'm just like, well, where did that come from and why?
Right.
So there are, but I do give people some examples of how to incorporate humor to the audience without offending people. And part of that is just getting them to work together, getting people of different generations to work together, different age groups, different demographics, straight, gay, black, white, come up with a funny presentation. In the course of doing that, you learn about each other. You learn what you think is funny versus what I think is funny. And I think that's what corporate America is missing now is, I don't think this is funny, so I'm going to go to HR and say, I didn't think that was funny, and you need to do something about this person who thought it was funny. And that's just not the way I think business should work, because I think there's another solution.
Yeah, and I didn't really think of you as a guy that I would be thinking of to suggest to my customers who have events as a guy who's going to come in and solve the HR problem. I mean, I've always thought of you as a guy who is just hilarious and personalizes
I can do that too. Yeah.
personalizes the presentations for each group. But obviously you listen. You have a wonderful pre-event phone call. You listen really well to the client, and they tell you what they're hoping you're going to accomplish and what they think about humor, what they think about comedy, knowing that you can customize messaging in there. So here's one question I just thought of that I think is fun. You've been doing this a long time, and you've done, I know, over 1,000 corporate presentations at this point. What's your favorite one? What's the one that was it just went so well, and there was a huge crowd or a really small crowd, and you just will never forget that one? What happened? What was it all about? Why was it so great?
Yeah, I can tell you, it was the CIA. It was, yes, it was actually.
So you went in with a lot of fear already. You were already trepidation.
Well, I think they went in with more.
Really?
But I actually did get, this is at Langley, and I got an email out of the blue, which is a joke. I put that in the act. I go, do you know how close I was to sending that email directly to my trash folder? When the CIA says, we'd like you to visit, that's just weird.
That's funny.
The CIA is a business, and they had this event where they said, we want to get people away from their computers, and they bring in speakers. And what was great about this, Chris, is people don't know this. You can't use your cell phone at CIA. At the CIA, they have to leave their cell phones in a box. That America's Covert Intelligence Agency can't use its cell phone. I think that's funny.
I love it.
But as a result, I had the most rapt audience that I've ever had, because I had their 100% attention. I didn't have anybody doing this or check in or that kind of thing, and it was great. And you could tell. I mean, what these people do. There ain't a lot of humor in the CIA during the course of the day. So I was able to comment. I mean, I made jokes about, the security process that I had to go through and so forth. And they just were so appreciative. And afterwards they said, we've never had anybody like this. And the person who hired me, she goes, I got to tell you, there was trepidation when I suggested comedy. But she said it went great. And that to this day remains probably my favorite presentation. Plus, it was just fascinating for me to be in there and to learn about what they do and kind of be in the bowels. I mean, I was able to get past where most people can't.
Right. Absolutely. That's pretty cool. And you've had a lot of access to the internal workings and issues and topical things within a lot of organizations over the years. Yeah. So when you opened for Jay Leno as a comedian, I'm curious about that as well, because was he kind of the biggest name comic or comedian that you've opened for? Or
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, as a comedian, I think he was. And this was an outdoor event. This was a corporate event. It was at it was for CNA Insurance in Grant Park at the Petrillo Music Shell. So big outdoor venue, and he was a surprise guest. I mean, word had kind of gotten out a little bit, but they basically had me come out ahead of time. I did stand-up. I interviewed some of the people in the audience. Who do you think's coming out?
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing. So they used me as kind of not only an opener for him, but also as an MC. And I do a lot of MCing for clients.
I've booked you for that. I know. Yes, you're very good at it.
Yes, you have. And that's fun, because then you really get a chance to, you're almost, as an MC, you're almost one of them. Instead of being the speaker on stage, you're part of them, and I love that.
I always suggest you and funny people to be MCs, because you don't want the MC to be a boring guy who can't ad lib. And I've seen those boring guys who can't ad lib, and they think they might be funny, so they're trying, and it's just like falling flat. And then they have the guy back the next year, or they've had the guy several times. I'm like, you gotta have somebody funny. And then they get it, and but it has to be really, really professional. Somebody who just knows how to toe that line, and certainly That's you. Yeah, I remember when I saw Jay Leno, I was just blown away about how funny he was, and he was clean, and it was just like 45 minutes, and it went by like that. He's amazing. And as far as like big name, famous celebrity comedians, he's definitely in my top three I've ever seen. I'm wondering if you agree with me on this list, or if you have other names, but Jim Gaffigan, amazing, hilarious. And of course, my favorite is Dana Carvey. I just love
Dana
all of his
Carvey.
impressions.
Yeah.
And he's very ad-libby, and he's very good with the audience, and really, really inclusive, and similar to you in some ways, where, he's going to incorporate a lot about who they are and what they do, and talk about his own stuff that relates to that audience. So Jay
Leno is great, and nobody's better with the audience. No one is quicker with an audience than Jay, and that's why Jay is great at corporate events too. And I think the one thing I don't think Jay Leno, even the whole time that he was the host of the Tonight Show, was it didn't showcase his big skill.
That's why I was blown away.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I think my whole thing is, but Jay is when he got that job, it's like you have to be about like Johnny. You have to tell political jokes, and you have to, and that's not how Jay got to be Jay. Jay worked the clubs and talked about television and commercials and his parents and stuff like that, and that's what got him the job. And then all of a sudden, you got to put a suit on and do political jokes every night. And I saw Jay before he got the Tonight Show down in Florida, and he did 2 hours, and there was never any political jokes. It was just 2 hours of stuff you could relate to and riffing with the audience, and it was brilliant. And
and where did you come up as a comedian? Was it in Florida?
I'm from Chicago originally, and I live in the Chicago suburbs now. I spent most of my life there, but my first job out of college was I was a newspaper reporter, and I moved to West Palm Beach, Florida. But that's really where I started my comedy career, because they opened up a great comedy club. The guy who ran it was a very, very well-known rock and roll music promoter, had very deep pockets, and could bring in the top name acts. Oh, wow. So I got to see these guys as they were on the cusp of, like, Seinfeld would come down, because his mom lived down there, and he would come down, and Jeff Foxworthy would come down.
A New Yorker.
Jeff Foxworthy, I know, in Florida, shocking. Don't tell anybody. Jeff Foxworthy would come down because he loved to see he was a big Atlanta Braves fan. They spring trained in West Palm Beach.
Right.
So, and I would get to go see these guys. Eventually I got to open for them, and that was my school. I would go there every weekend and just watch the best of the best.
Yeah, I love those stories of, the Jim Carrey sleeping in the car, and all these guys, paying their dues in comedy. What a tough road that is.
And they all did. They all did.
It's never easy for anyone.
No.
And there's not a lot of money in the beginning at all. So it's great that you've been able to, add on the corporate side of things to comedy for yourself. And you honestly are just one of those sure things that I've known almost my whole career. I think I've known you, and just a pleasure to work with every time, leading up to the event. It's always a pleasure. So my hat's off to you, my friend, because you are just killing it. You are so funny. Clients all love you. I know we've got a couple things on the burner right now. Hopefully they come through as well. And I think that people need to, obviously laugh now more than ever. There's definitely a world that we live in where we need to take a deep breath. We need to relax. And I am having a lot of clients and customers wanting to have something about wellness and health and stress and all of that, but also comedy and fun and humor. So I know that your job is more
play into well. Yeah, the two play. I mean, comedy relieves stress, and it encourages wellness, and it encourages good mental health. So why wouldn't a corporate event include a fun element? To me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, so I think you're going to be busier than you have been maybe going forward here, because it's a lot of live events are happening again, as you know, thank goodness, and we're back with that.
Why am I doing this? I should be doing that.
Yeah, it's like we're not sure it's over, but
I know
it feels like we're back in person again, and I know that you are more happy about that than anyone. So
yeah,
I'm so happy about it too, of course, and my clients, of course, are great. They have these great events where people are getting back together again, so it's just great to see everybody taking a sigh of relief, and now let's laugh. So
Absolutely.
yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm such a huge fan, as you can tell, as you know. And I will look forward to talking to you soon. And thanks again.
Absolutely, Chris. Always good to see you.